We're back, and it's finally time to hear the voices of these real people who were discovered with the help of social media. We'll just take 2 minutes to set up the stage. And before we get to hear these people, me and Joseph would like to spend some time introducing these people and telling the stories of these 6 shortlisted nominees who represent the entire sample size of the nomination we received for this campaign. I'd like to start off with Dr. Nessie Hill. She's present in the audience today, but we'll get to hear her voice tomorrow at the high-level panel. Dr. Hill is from the US. She founded the Essex County College African Students Association, which is an organization at Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey, which promotes the eclectic cultures that are only found in Africa. She has presented on several multilateral forums on gender and development issues, including the United Nations. She's also the founder of a non-profit organization that promotes women's education and raises awareness about health issues amongst women in Cameroon, along with providing financial assistance to their families. She's currently the New Jersey, New York president of Ex-Soccer Students Association, which is an association of ex-students of Soccer Baptist College in Cameroon, with the main goal of putting together programs geared towards advancing the future of the girl child in soccer.
The second person, or maybe 2 people whom we have selected, is Mahendran and his wife. Mahendran comes from Trichy, and both of them belong to a nomadic tribe called Marikurur, which also means hunters for the fox. They are around 500,000 all over India, and today Mahendran and his wife Sita are recognized for the relentless effort. For the last 25 years, they have been lobbying with the government to get the recognition of scheduled tribe, which finally they have got recently. So Mahendran and his wife, we are recognizing him, and he also has an orphanage with his NGO called News back in Trichy. So Mahendran, thank you.
Shashikala Gurpur from India. Dr. Gurpur is the director of Symbiosis Law School, Pune, and the Dean of Faculty of Law of the university since 2007. She's won a number of awards, including the State Government Award, Gold Medal for topping in LLM, and as you can already read, she was a Fulbright Fellow, Narrow Fellow in 2011. Her contribution towards tribal rights movement in association with Samagra is significant to be mentioned here. In addition, Dr. Gurpur has given several presentations and talks on gender issues, human rights, and equality at several multilateral forums internationally.
The next person here is Father Francis. He is now coming from the land of the headhunters, Nagaland. And Father, as the tribe over there has locally accepted him, is known with his new name called Father Imso. So we welcome you, Father, over here. The place where he stays is maybe very far away from what we usually call civilization, where connectivity to his place is very difficult, and Father, through his relentless effort, is trying to connect this remote village and set up a school there, which will in turn enable the children and maybe in the future help the villagers to become prominent. And Father, in his own ways, takes these children to various international platforms to make the world know that he comes from a very beautiful land. So thank you, Father Imso.
Next up, we have Nishtha Anand from Gujarat, India. We are very thankful to Nishtha for making the effort to come to the conference and grace us with her presence. Nishtha has taken a lot of steps and worked in rehabilitation sector a lot. I'll let Nishtha talk about the work she's done, but I would like to highlight that she's conducted camps and picnics in 9 districts in Gujarat and donated 14 wheelchairs, which empowered the people living with muscular dystrophy. She's also the chapter head for the IIMD, which is the Indian Association of Muscular Dystrophy.
Finally, the last person on the list for today is Dr. Ashwin Mahesh. He is a man who has a star to his name. Actually, he's an astronomer and you have a star. He used to work in NASA and then he has come back to India. His basic maybe motivation is to join the civil society and the government, and today we are recognizing him for almost 10,000 homes that he has set up with the help of government for the less privileged. So thank you, Dr. Ashwin.
Mr. Mahendran and his wife, Mrs. Sita, on stage, please. Along with Dr. Shashikala Gurpur, if you could please join us on stage. It's finally time to hear from the stars of the show themselves. So without wasting much time, I'm going to give the floor to Nishtan to talk about the work she's done and what inspires her for 3 to 5 minutes or so.
A very good evening to all of you. I'll not take too much time because it's already too late and everybody is, I hope, waiting for dinner. But what I've learned from my life, that after diagnosed at the age of 11 with rare genetic progressive disorder and with several hurdles and challenges which I faced in my life, is that positive attitude and never give up. This inspired me to work for my fellow friends, those who are suffering from muscular dystrophy. So with this purpose, that to show them, to make them realize the power of positive thinking, and they are also much more than equal with like others. We started this NGO in 2008. We are a group of professionals placed at working at different places, and we work for the betterment of muscular dystrophy people. As this is a very rare genetic disorder, neglected, not aware about, people are not aware about, and the severity is so much that it affects all the muscles of your body. It is means one less by less your muscles are gets weaker and all that. So severity you can imagine about. So we work for the people, those who make them aware. For them we conduct awareness camps to reach out to them. Because no one, even not the government, are having official data how many muscular dystrophy affected people are there. So we started a concept of awareness camps. Through that we reached to them. After that we help them, the children's, for the educational assistance or finance assistant or caretaker or wheelchair providing. And the other thing which we are providing is fun-filled picnics, which is very much needed for my NGO kids, because they have never been anywhere, so they are in such a condition that parents themselves prefer to take them in the society. So this all things which we are trying to give to them. And last but not the least, thank you so much for honoring me with this and recognizing my efforts, which has not only encouraged me, but given me much more power to work for much better and with much force. Thank you so much.
You are too kind, Nishta. We're the ones honored with your presence here today. And thank you so much for sharing that very inspiring story. For our next speaker, I'm going to give the mic to Vasanthi, because she's going to help.
No, you give the mic to Sita, and I will do the translation. Great, thanks.
Arvi. என் பேர் சீதா, தமிழ்நாட்டிலிருந்து வந்திருக்கேன். திருச்சி அந்த ஊரில் வந்திருக்கோம். நாங்கள் வந்து நாடோடி இனத்தை சேர்ந்தவங்க. எங்களுக்குன்னு நிலையான வீடு கிடையாது, அடிப்படை வசதி எதுவும் கிடையாது. நிலையான வீடு
இது வரைக்கும் நான் சொல்லிடுறேன், அதுக்கப்புறம் நீங்க கண்டினியூ பண்ணிக்கலாம். This is Sita from Trichy, and just to set the context, their nomination is for the achievement of enlisting their community under the SC/ST category. Now this is something that all of you are aware of in terms of the caste related issues in India. Okay, so really in some sense they belong to a caste which was not listed under the government's orders, and therefore they really were invisible as a community. Okay, so that is the contribution that they've been able to bring that into the policy of the government and actually make those changes. And so she basically is talking about the community that she comes from, which is a nomadic tribal, and they are called the Gypsy community.
அந்த மாதிரி தெரு தெருவா போயிட்டு இருக்கும்போது உங்களை மாதிரி ஆட்கள் எல்லாம் எங்க ஜனங்களை பார்த்து சொல்லுவாங்க, பசங்களெல்லாம் படிக்க வைங்க, ஏன் இந்த மாதிரி நாடோடித்தனமா இருக்கீங்க அப்படின்ட்டு. எங்க ஜனம் வந்து மழைக்கு கூட பள்ளிக்கூடம் பக்கம் போக மாட்டாங்க.
But when they were young and because they were nomadic, they were going from place to place, and people like us would tell them, why don't you educate your children in the schools? But what they realized, the community members were so afraid of the schools that they wouldn't even send their children anywhere near.
அந்த மாதிரி அப்படி இருக்கும்போது எங்க தாத்தா அவங்க வந்து ரொம்ப இன்ட்ரெஸ்டா எங்களை கொண்டு போய் சென்னையில ஒரு ஹாஸ்டல்ல சேர்த்தாங்க படிக்க வைக்கிறதுக்கோசரம்.
So some well-meaning people took them to Chennai and put them in a hostel, in a school.
நாங்க படிச்சு வெளியில வரும்போது அதே நிலவரம் தான், அதே மாதிரி அதே மாதிரி நாடோடித்தனமா தான் போயிட்டு இருந்தோம்.
And after they finished the school and they got out, they still had to continue to do exactly what they were doing earlier, which is moving from place to place.
பிளாட்பாரங்கள்ல இல்ல ரயில்வே ஸ்டேஷன்ல பஸ் ஸ்டாண்ட்ல இந்த மாதிரி மணிமாலை வித்து கிடைக்கிற காசுல மணிமாலை வந்து தமிழ்நாட்டுல அதிகமா விரும்ப மாட்டாங்க. ஏன்னா அவங்க வெறும் தங்க செயின் அதுதான் போட்டு அவங்களுக்கு பழக்கம். இருந்தாலும் அவங்க இதனுடைய விலை அதிகமா இருந்தாலும் அவங்க கேட்கிற விலை நம்ம அந்த டைமுக்கு எங்க பசிக்கு கொடுத்துருவோம். கிடைக்கிறத வச்சுட்டு வீட்டுல அந்த பிளாட்பாரத்திலே வாழ்ந்துருவோம் குழந்தைங்களோட.
The community is known for stringing those beads that she's carrying there with her. So that's really their profession in terms of what they have done traditionally over centuries. And therefore, when they are nomadic and they are at the platforms and the bus stations and all these places, what they found was that people from the state that she hails from, which is a neighboring state, Tamil Nadu, they actually prefer gold ornaments. They really don't prefer these glass beads. And therefore, effectively, it was how well the other party could bargain and how vulnerable they were in terms of what they got as money.
அந்த மாதிரி வாழ்க்கை நடத்திட்டு இருக்கும்போது எங்களுக்குள்ள ஒரு சின்ன ஒரு ஆசை வந்தது. சரி, எவ்வளவு நாள் தான் இந்த மாதிரி நாடோடித்தனமா இருக்கிறது, நம்ம படிச்சு ஓரளவு கொஞ்சம் படிப்பு வந்திருக்கு, நம்ம குழந்தைங்களுக்கு கொஞ்சம் படிப்பு கொடுத்தா என்ன அப்படின்னு யோசனை பண்ணோம்.
At this point in time, for the both of them, it just struck saying that how long do we go with a future like this? And we have got some education. What's the way that we give back that to the rest of the community?
எங்க கலாச்சாரத்தை பத்தி சொல்லணும்னா தமிழ்நாட்டு ஜனங்களுக்கு எங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப டிஃப்ரெண்ட். அவங்க வந்து இந்த மாதிரி சாரி கட்டுவாங்க, நாங்க வந்து இந்த ஆஃப் பாவாடை தாவணி போடுவோம், சில பேர் ஷர்ட் மாதிரி போட்டுக்குவாங்க, நிறைய மணி போட்டுக்குவோம், நிறைய பச்சையெல்லாம் குத்திக்குவோம். அவங்களுக்கு எங்களுக்குமே பார்க்க ரொம்ப வித்தியாசம், வார்த்தைகள் வந்து ரொம்ப வித்தியாசமா இருக்கும். அதனாலே நாங்க வந்து அவங்க எங்களை எந்த விதமான எங்களையும் நெருங்க மாட்டாங்க, நாங்களும் அவங்கள நெருங்க மாட்டோம். எங்க பாதுகாப்பு முதல்ல. ஏன்னா நம்ம லேடி குழந்தைங்க வயசு பிள்ளைங்க எல்லாம் தனித்தனியா போவையில ஏதாவது தப்பு நடந்துருன்னு பயந்துட்டு கொஞ்சம் எல்லாம் தள்ளியே இருப்போம், அவங்களோட எந்த வித தொடர்பும் வச்சுக்க மாட்டோம்.
Actually, we were, as a community, what she's saying, and I'll just present it in her words. She says, as a community, we actually stayed away from the people of Tamil Nadu, and the reason was primarily because our attire, the way we dressed, this is not the way we wear our sari. We wear a skirt and a drape over, and that is pretty much different from what others wear. They also wear a lot of beads, okay, the women, and more importantly, they have a lot of tattoos in their hands. So, with all of that, they were so different from the people in the city that they would be afraid to go to them. And even more important, because they were women and they were vulnerable in the age group, they were even more concerned about their safety. So that is the background, that in terms of the differences with the others.
அந்த மாதிரி இந்த குழந்தைங்களை எப்படி காப்பாத்துறது, இவங்களை எப்படி மாத்துறது அப்படின்னு யோசனை பண்ணி முதல்ல ஒரு ஸ்கூல் ஒன்று ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணோம் 1990.
So the question was, how do we interact with the society, but more importantly, how do we make change in our community? These two were the questions, and so we decided to start a school in 1990.
அப்ப வந்து எங்களுக்கு எங்க பேக்ரவுண்ட் வந்து பெரிய வசதியெல்லாம் கிடையாது. நாங்களே டெய்லி அன்னாட மணி வித்து பொழைப்பு நடத்துறோங்க. ஆர்வ கோளாறுல 100 குழந்தைங்களை சேர்த்து சாப்பாடு போறதுக்கு வழி கிடையாது.
Yeah, we are not a affluent set of people. But in our enthusiasm to do something, we were able to get 100 children from the community. And when we got the 100 children, we had nothing to actually feed them also. No money.
அப்ப என்ன பண்ணா திருப்பி இதே மணி மேல நாங்க தெரு எடுத்து விற்க ஆரம்பிச்சோம்.
So what we started doing was picking up the same beads that our community sold, and we began to sell it to raise money.
அப்ப அந்த மாதிரி அந்த ஜனங்க பாக்கும்போது என்ன சொன்னாங்க, படிச்சு வேலை கிடைக்கும், ஒரு மாறுதல் கிடைக்கும்னா நீயும் திருப்பி மணி மேல தானே விற்க வர, அதனால என் பிள்ளைங்களை எல்லாம் ஸ்கூலுக்கு அனுப்ப மாட்டோம் அப்படின்னு ஸ்கூல் பிள்ளைங்க எல்லாம் பேரண்ட்ஸ் வந்து கூப்பிட்டு போக ஆரம்பிச்சிட்டாங்க.
And so the community began to ask them, saying that after studying and with your education, there's been no difference or progress in your life. So why should we send our children anyway? Because you are also hawking the same set of beads that we are doing. So why go to school at all?
அப்புறம் நாங்க எவ்வளவு எடுத்து சொல்லியும் ஏற்கனவே படிப்புனாலே பிடிக்காது. ஒரு 2 நாள் இருப்பாங்க, ஓடிடுவான். அவன் எந்த ஊர்ல இருக்காங்களோ திருப்பி அவனை கூட்டு வரதே எங்களுக்கு பெரிய வேலையா போச்சு.
And the children did quite like the school, and they kept running away to go back to that nomadic lifestyle that they were used to, and therefore to go and just bring them back to school was a challenge for them.
அப்புறம் வந்து இந்த மாதிரி ஒவ்வொருத்தருங்களா சந்திக்கும் போது அவங்க நிறைய ஐடியா சொன்னாங்க. சரி, நீங்க இந்த மாதிரி நீங்க ஆர்வமா இருந்தீங்கன்னா நீங்க இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு சொசைட்டி ஒன்று ஆரம்பிக்க கூடாது அப்படின்னு எங்களுக்கு ஐடியா கொடுத்தாங்க. அப்புறம் சொசைட்டி ஆரம்பிச்சோம். சொசைட்டி ஆரம்பிச்சு என்ன பண்றது, எங்களுக்கு இங்கிலீஷ் நாலேஜ் எல்லாம் இருக்காது. ஒவ்வொரு ஆளுகிட்டையும் நாங்கள் போய் அது கேட்டு 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 ஒன்று ஒன்றா செஞ்சு பேசி அப்புறம் நியூஸ்னு ஒன்று ஆரம்பித்தோம். அப்புறம் ஏன் இந்த ஜனங்க படிக்க மாட்டேங்கிறாங்கன்னு நாங்கள் ஆராய்ச்சி பண்ணும்போது எங்களை வந்து எம்பிசி அப்படிங்கிற லிஸ்ட்டில் போட்டு வச்சுருந்தாங்க.
So she basically said that when they decided that they'll form a not-for-profit organization and they registered themselves as a society under the Indian law. And but when they registered themselves as a society, they also went back to actually do some research on saying, why are children not getting access? Or why are they not in schools? And then they figured out that their community was not registered under the categories by which the government actually provides preferential treatment for children, for education.
அப்புறம் நிறைய போராட்டங்கள், நிறைய ஜனங்கள் எல்லாம் சேர்த்து பல்வேறு போராட்டம் பண்ணி 25 வருஷம் போராட்டத்துக்கு அப்புறம் இந்த வருஷம் தான் எங்களுக்கு அந்த எஸ்டி ஸ்டேட்டஸ் கிடைச்சிருக்கு.
After several agitations, protests and rallies with the communities, after 25 years of struggle, this year in August, they actually got their community registered as a community which required preferential access.
இந்த போராட்டத்துல 90 days நாங்க ஜெயில கூட இருந்திருக்கோம்.
Because of the struggle, they spent close to 90 days in the jail, in the prison, just to be able to get this.
அப்பெல்லாம் நாங்க ரொம்ப மனசு உடைஞ்சிட்டோம். என்னன்னா எதுக்கு இந்த வேலை, பேசாம விட்டுட்டு நம்ம வேலை பார்த்துட்டு இருந்தா நம்ம ஒரு குடும்பமாவது நல்லா இருக்கும் அப்படின்னு அப்ப நினைச்சோம். ஆனா இப்ப வந்து நாங்க ஒரு வேலைக்கு போய் ஒரு ஜாப் கிடைச்சி நல்லா இருந்தா என் ஃபேமிலி மட்டும்தான் நல்லா இருக்கும். இப்ப வந்து ஒரு கம்யூனிட்டியா சேஞ்ச் ஆகும் அப்படிங்கும் போது ரொம்ப சந்தோஷமா இருக்கு.
When we were then in that jail and going through all these problems, we wondered whether it was worth it and whether we should just go and take ourselves a job and go with it. But today, when they see what has happened, they're saying that if we had done that, it would have been just our family which would have benefited. But today, our entire community has benefited from us.
எங்க பொண்ணு தேர்ட் இயர் இன்ஜினியர் படிக்க வச்சிட்டு இருக்காங்க. எங்க பிள்ளைங்களெல்லாம் 12 வயசுல கல்யாணம் பண்ணி கொடுத்துருவாங்க. நாங்க எங்க கம்யூனிட்டி எதிர்ப்பையும் மீறி எங்க பிள்ளை 3வது வருஷம் இன்ஜினியரிங் போயிட்டு இருக்கு.
Okay, in their community they get the children married off at about 12 years, the girl child. They have their child who's now doing her 3rd year of engineering.
Good evening everybody. நாங்கள் படிச்சுட்டு இருக்கையில் இவங்களை பெண் கேட்டு போனோம். அப்போ அவங்க ஃபாதர் மதர் வந்து பொண்ணு தர முடியாதுன்ட்டாங்க. உனக்கு நீ படிச்சிருக்க, கவர்மெண்ட்டில் வேலை இல்லை, எங்கள் நரிக்குற ஒரு தொழில் வேட்டையாடுறது, ஹண்டிங் ஃபஸ்ட்டு. அந்த ஹண்டிங்கும் தெரியாது, பிஸ்னஸும் தெரியாது, உனக்கு எப்படி நாங்கள் பொண்ணு கொடுக்குறது அப்படின்னு அவங்க ரிஜெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டாங்க. அதுக்கப்புறம் நான் 6 மாதம் ஹண்டிங் வந்து கற்றுக்கிட்டேன். ஆனால் போலீஸ் ஒரு பக்கம் டார்ச்சர், அவங்க அரெஸ்ட் பண்ணுற சூழ்நிலையில் விரட்டி வர்றாங்க எங்களை. அதுலேயும் மீறி இவளை கட்டிக்கணும்னா I trained hunting.
Okay, very nice story there where he's saying that in their, when he went to ask for her hand in marriage, her father told him that you neither have a job with the government, nor do you know how to hunt properly. So in what way do you think you can support my daughter? So finally he had to learn hunting for 6 months, and by then the Indian government had banned hunting. So caught between the government and his father-in-law, he finally said that he managed to marry her.
அந்த ஹண்டிங் கற்றுக்கிட்டது அப்புறம் தான் இவங்களுக்கு திருமணம் செஞ்சு கொடுத்தாங்க. அதுக்கு முன்னாடி படிச்சுட்டு வந்தோடனே சென்னை ஹார்பரில் ஒரு வேலைக்கு இன்டர்வியூ வந்துச்சு. எனக்கு இன்டர்வியூ வந்தோடனே அதுக்கு நான் அட்டன் பண்ணேன். அப்போது வெங்கட்ராமன் வந்து ஜனாதிபதியாக இருந்தார், சங்கர் தயாள் சர்மா வந்து துணை ஜனாதிபதியாக இருந்தார். அந்த கொஸ்டின்ஸ் எல்லாம் கேட்டாங்க என்கிட்ட. அப்போ அந்த இன்டர்வியூவில் நான் கரெக்டாக ஆன்சர் சொல்லிட்டேன். உடனே சேர்மன் ஹார்பர் சேர்மன் வந்து உடனே அவங்களுக்கு ஆர்டர் போட்டு கொடுத்துருங்கன்னு ஆர்டர் போட்டார். ஆனால் அவங்க வந்து பட்டியல் பார்க்கையில் நாங்களாம் எம்பிசியில் இருக்கிறதுனால இது எஸ்டி ஸ்டேட்டஸுக்கான ஆர்டர், இது வேலையான வாய்ப்பு, அதனால் உங்களுக்கு வந்து எஸ்டி இல்லாதனால அந்த ஆர்டர் நாங்கள் தர முடியாதுன்னு எங்களுக்கு ரிஜெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டாங்க.
Actually, his journey in this fight was primarily because he wanted to get a job to be able to marry her. And then he got into the Ports Authority and cleared the interview. And our former president was one of the members at that point in time on this selection committee. After he had cleared the committee, when his records were being checked for whether he belonged to the community that had an affirmative action coverage under the government, they realized that he was not listed under that community. So he didn't make it to that job.
அதுக்கப்புறம் தான் நாங்கள் இந்த எஸ்டி ஸ்டேட்டஸ் வந்து கர்நாடகா ஹக்கிபிக்கி அவங்க எஸ்டி ஸ்டேட்டஸ், அவங்கெல்லாம் என்னுடைய ரிலேட்டிவ். அங்கே நக்கல்வாடு ஆந்திராவில் அவங்கெல்லாம் எங்களுடைய ரிலேட்டிவ். அங்கே கூட பெண் கேட்டோம், நாங்கள் கட்டி கொடுத்தா அங்கே உங்கள் நாட்டில் எம்பிசி ஆயிடுறாங்க, அப்போ நாங்கள் பொண்ணு தர முடியாது அப்படின்னா அவங்கெல்லாம் கூட ரிஜெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டாங்க அந்த சூழ்நிலையில்.
So in a way what he did was mobilize the community by saying that in all the other states they have actually given that preferential access, and therefore we need to provide the same, and used that to be able to effectively lobby for his community. Sir, konjam mudichudum.
ஒரே ஒரு சின்ன, நாங்கள் இந்த நிலையை மாற்றணுன்ட்டு எஸ்டிக்காக ஃபைட் பண்ணிட்டு நாங்கள் முடிவு எடுத்து எங்களுடைய பயணம் தொடர்ந்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கு. அப்போ எங்களுடைய மக்கள் வில்லேஜில் நாங்கள் போய் விசிட் பண்ணுறோம். அப்போது நாங்கள் வந்து ஆக்சுவலாக ஹண்டிங் போகையில் சின்ன சின்ன நாட்டு வெடி வச்சுருப்போம் நரிக்காக. அந்த மழை தொடர்ந்து பேஞ்சதுனால அந்த வடியை, அந்த நாட்டு வெடியை வந்து காய போட்டிருந்தோம். அப்போ ஒரு காக்கா வந்து அந்த நாட்டு வெடியை தூக்கி கொண்டு போய் ஒருத்தருடைய குடிசையில் போட்டுருச்சு. அப்போ ஒருத்தர் பல்லு தேய்ச்சிக்கிட்டே அந்த குடிசையை பார்த்தோன்னா எவனோ சூனியம் வச்சுட்டான்டா அப்படின்னு சொல்லி அந்த வெடியை எடுத்து கொண்டு போய் ஒரு சாமியார்ட்ட கொடுக்குறாரு. சாமியார்ட்ட கொடுத்த உடனே அந்த சாமியார் வந்து வாங்கிட்டு, நான் இந்த சூனியத்தை அவங்க வீட்டுக்கே நான் ரிட்டர்ன் பண்ணுறேன், நீங்கள் எனக்கு எவ்வளோ கொடுப்பீங்கன்னு சொன்னோன்னா 5000 ரூபா தரேன்னு சொல்கிறார். இது ரியல் ஸ்டோரி. அந்த 5000 சொன்னோன்னா அந்த சாமியாருக்கு ரொம்ப அருள் பொங்கிக்கிட்டு வந்துருச்சு. அப்போ அவர் எடுத்து அந்த சாமிகிட்ட கொண்டு போய் அருள் வந்து அதை வாயில் வச்சு கடிக்கிறார். கடித்த உடனே அவர் உடனே மூஞ்சி எல்லாம் செதறி ஸ்பாட்ல அவுட் ஆகிறார்.
அது கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டம் எனக்கு டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ணுறது ஃபுல்லாக. பட் ஸோ அதை கொஞ்சம் என்னது அதோட முக்கியமாக சொல்ல வேண்டியிருக்கேன்னு சொல்லிடுவோம்.
அந்த மாதிரி அந்த நரி அந்த வெடிச்ச உடனே அவர் ஸ்பாட்ல அவுட்டு. அப்போ இந்த நரி குண்டு யார் வச்சிருப்பாங்கன்னா நரிக்குறவர்கள் வச்சிருப்பாங்கன்னு போலீஸை வந்து அவங்கள அரெஸ்ட் பண்ணிடுறாங்க. பண்ண இந்த கேஸ் ஜட்ஜுக்கிட்ட போகுது. அப்போ ஜட்ஜை வந்து சொல்றாரு, அந்த வெடி குண்டு போட்ட அந்த காக்கா எங்க, நான் அப்பாவே நரிக்குறவனை பிடிச்சிட்டு வந்துட்டேன், அவனா கொண்டு போய் போட்டான், காக்கா கொண்டு தூக்கி கொண்டு போட்டிருக்குன்னா அந்த காக்கா எங்க, அதையும் அரெஸ்ட் பண்ணு அப்படின்னு சொல்லி கேஸ் டிஸ்மிஸ் பண்ணிட்டாங்க. அந்த மாதிரி நாங்கள் வந்து பயங்கரம். இப்போ சமீபத்தில் கூட
கொஞ்சம் முடிக்கணும், ரொம்ப லேட் ஆயிடுச்சு. ஓகே, சோ
நிறைய ஸ்ட்ரகிளுக்கு அப்புறமா இப்போ வந்து எங்களுக்கு எஸ்டி ஸ்டேட்டஸ் கிடைச்சிருக்கு. கவர்மெண்ட்டுக்கு நாங்கள் இப்போ ரெக்கமெண்டேஷன் வச்சிருக்கோம். எங்களை வந்து எஸ்டி வந்து 50 ஆண்டுக்கு அப்புறம் கொண்டு வந்திருக்கிறதுனால ஒரு ஃபேமிலிக்கு வந்து மத்திய மாநில அரசுகள் 5 லட்சம் நஷ்ட ஈடும் 10 ஏக்கர் நிலமும் வழங்கணும்ட்டு நாங்கள் அந்த ஒரு ஹை லெவல் கமிட்டிக்கு நாங்கள் ரெக்கமெண்டேஷன் அனுப்பியிருக்கோம். எஸ்டிலாம் வந்து என்னென்ன சலுகைகள் இருக்கு அது அத்தனையும் என்னுடைய சமுதாய மக்களுக்கு கிடைக்கணும்னா இப்போ நாங்கள் ஒரு விழா கூட ஃபங்க்ஷன் ஒன்று வச்சிருக்கோம்.
சரி,
ஆல் இந்தியா.
அவ்வளவுதான்.
தேங்க்யூ ஃபார் ஆன்சர்.
Context from which they come from, and because they are tribals and nomads, no one, and I mean the whole the society's perception is that they really are likely to be into witchcraft and other forms, okay, which makes it more difficult in terms of, and so they had a case which was just bizarre that he was narrating, but which ended up in the court because someone who was obviously more powerful took it to the court. Fortunately, they had a judge who dismissed the case. But I think the important thing to talk about is access to whether it is the judiciary or whether it is the politics or whether it is the state. I think it's really in terms of the difficulty in making that access happen. Okay? Thank you.
நல்ல பவர்ல இருந்திருப்பாங்க.
Your story with us. We really appreciate you guys coming down to Bangalore for this conference, and also congratulations on winning your 25-year-long battle to get your community registered as SCST.
Thank you for the opportunity. I wouldn't like to spend much time because I feel in front of the big universe of the struggles that both the candidates have faced here, I think my work is a small speck. I have done 2 levels of engagement with the struggle against inequality. One is as a teacher, as an educationist. I've never tried to confine myself to the portals of an institute where I was appointed in various appointments. I have served as a law teacher. Before that, when I was a science graduate, I was scheduled to join Indian Institute of Science as a merit student to pursue my higher degree. Perhaps I would have gone as a geneticist, but instead of reforming through the scientific way, I was chosen to reform through the social way because in my family there was a litigation for property. I hail from a community of matriarchal families, which is very native to coastal Karnataka. So there was a litigation going on in 4 generations. So I wanted to know the secret of why there is no solution to this conflict. Because I couldn't see the face of my grandmother, I couldn't see my relatives. People would say, that is your uncle, this is your aunt. So I determined when I was doing my science, I was a very good debater. People used to say, why don't you be a lawyer? And I attended some leadership training, etc. So I decided that what my father cannot do, what my mother cannot do, my uncle cannot do, why can't I do? So I went and took an admission in the law school. The law school principal said, why should you join law school? You have so much percentage. My wife works as a biochemistry professor there. Why don't you join Mangalore University? I said, no, I'm determined. Slowly, the principal got to know me as a person who was interested in doing something beyond the college. So I got engaged. I started the first legal aid clinic in the very college where I was a student. So aside from that, I started studying the family case, and I saw that it was nothing but an ego battle, and the peace between the families was so easy to attain, but the ego was not letting it. So I tried to gather support, but my uncle was such a reticent kind of conflict holder because he was in possession of the property. We were away from the property. So I didn't see any future in terms of economics and social capital. So what I did was I strategized, became a kingmaker kind of thing. My classmates and myself were very much in battle for popularity in the college. I was a very popular student leader, but I receded to my classmate and I told him, I need one favor from you. He became the president. He was rejoicing his success, but I asked a big favor. The favor was that we are going to talk to my uncle. So I took the initiative, went and talked to my uncle. There was a kind of, the look in his eyes I can never forget because women in their household never stepped out. I was the first woman graduate, first one to enter the law school. So it was a kind of contempt with which he was greeting me, but I didn't give up. And I used all. By then, my network was very strong with the police department and others. So that strategy, my uncle could not say no. And in the court also, with the judges and others, I had access because of the legal aid camp. So in a male-dominated, the male bastion kind of a profession, to use that profession to the advantage and to use it to settle the case out of court, it saved almost 30 years. If we had continued to settle the battle through the court, it wouldn't have happened. So this is one speck of my personal struggle with equality and to get a place of honor as a female member of the family, where even though I have a private matriarchy, the public patriarchy was a challenge. Coming to the next aspect of my professional struggle, I should concede here that when I was doing my LLM, I chose to do my master's because my big mission was over before I could finish my law degree. So I didn't see a meaning in entering the small local court and practicing because we had only 2 women lawyers who were juniors, and it was such a patriarchal thing. I wouldn't like to go into the details of that. But I went to masters and I topped the university because I topped the university, but on the previous day of the final examination, I had just attended my father's funeral. After attending the funeral, I took a night bus, came to Mysore, wrote my exam, and then to emerge as a topper was such a challenge. So I saw that in every challenge there was an opportunity. With every challenge I became strong. With every challenge my determination was getting strong, and I was rediscovering myself as a person more than as a woman. And once I finished my LLM, I joined in the same college in Mangalore. I developed a community group. Already there were some NGOs who were searching for an ideological kind of framework. Some of us were into Marxism, some of us were into liberalism. So there was a need for a very strong feminist framework. So that was something that I contributed to Mangalore. And because of my work, I was recognized, and I was the first woman to get a tenured track professorship in National Law School, Bangalore, which was the premier law school in the country by then. So I was teaching from that small town by the then Vice Chancellor, Dr. Menon. And to this day, myself and Menon have been serving this mission of community service along with many others. So in National Law School, Bangalore, we created the first ever gender literacy kit, administered it in Mount Carmel College. But within a year, I married an Irish law professor. I went to Ireland, started teaching law in Ireland. In Ireland, again, university was looking for somebody who would do community education in legal rights. For the prestigious professors, it was something of a no-no because they were very busy in their research. I took up the challenge. So every community session that I took in deprived inner cities converted into a catharsis session, especially where women would open up with stories of domestic violence. I was surprised to see that the patriarchy which was there in India had no different pace in the West as well. It was much worse there with the kind of struggle with the market, this missing spiritual rhythm, etc. So after 3 years, I came back to India. In India, I again continued. I was the mother of I was a single mother by then. I had to support my son. But I joined a media institute, taught part-time, but meanwhile I developed a group called Gender and Human Rights Network. It was in the framework of CIDO. So that was the first ever group that was brought up. Today it has continued with 70,000 members across Dakshin Kannada district in the coastal Karnataka. I didn't see a purpose for my work after that. Then I moved to Middle East, took up a corporate job, and in the corporate sector I first time confronted business lacking ethics. So there we had to convert, my job as the HR head was converted into a role of being a change maker in converting work schedules, creating work-life balance, because it was a female-intensive industry, the healthcare industry, but female-indifferent. So a lot of things had to be brought in. Because I was a lawyer, I knew how to work out the rules. So things were much difficult, but we were able to bring a lot of equity into the process. Thereafter, I was invited to join Symbiosis. In Symbiosis, for the first time, we created the Community Legal Service Network with the CUNY Law School of New York. And this network, it is the first network which has got a corpus of 20 lakhs rupees. So with the turnover of that, plus some donations, we are able to continue the project, helping women, and also getting global exchange students to learn the law in a development context. So that is to put the things very briefly, but the larger story then is a bigger version. So overall, what I would like to highlight here is that the struggle is not only for gender equality, but also to create a personality which should be autonomous, which should be making ethics is ultimately, in my opinion, a choice. To make a choice and to live on your own terms is not easy as a person.
Fights for equality, and tomorrow you will see 3 more. And we would like to take this opportunity to honor the 6 people who have been shortlisted because they are over here. We would be sending the certificate of recognition to all the people who have made it to the wall. But since the 6 people are here in the hall today with us, we would like to honor them by giving the certificate. So I'd like to call upon Christoph, Vasanthi ji and Theodorina to do the honors. And maybe as we call the names, if you can come forward one by one And this is our small way of recognizing your efforts along with all the 46 others who have been part of this equality fight. We start with Dr. Hill. We have Father Imso next. Father Imso. To call upon Dr. Sasikala to come and receive the certificate, please. Mr. Mahendran and Sitama. Like to honor Nishka next. Finally, I'd like to call upon Dr. Ashwin Mahesh. Mahendra and Sita from Tamil Nadu want to just offer a gesture of thanksgiving. So as per their tradition, they will offer a small mala of beads to the guests on the stage.
Father Francis and Ashwin will join us on the panel in a few minutes, okay? Because he was slated to come here at 2, and so he would join us. The purpose of this panel is really a continuation of what we did yesterday with the other members, but the only difference is that we have requested Father Francis, Nessie and Ashwin to talk about what they think needs to be done to be able to bridge inequality. And the reason for this is as we are coming to the close of the conference, I think it's important for each of us to take away messages on how we can impact. Okay? So, yes, Nessie. So what we have is 5 minutes of presentation from each of you. And we will probably start with Father and then go to Nessie and then close with Ashwin.
Good afternoon. I have just this great pleasure to acknowledge the honor given to me on behalf of the group of Nagas or Naga tribals called Imchingers. They live in the eastern border of India towards Myanmar. Well, Nagas in general are not so much known to the outside world. And some of them are known for some reasons, positively because of the cultural variety, the communitarian living style, negatively because of the terrorist activities that go on in our land. For good and bad, people are known. And I am happy I work with one group of people for the last 8 years, though in general I have been there in the state for the last 25 years. It has been very fulfilling and very satisfying to work with this small group of people. It's not easy for people from outside to understand exactly what goes on there. Right now, we are on the verge of another tribal conflict. It is likely to explode in any hour from now. This is the situation that we live in. And people are segregated, separated, naturally because of the geographical terrain, politically for many reasons, and then tribally because of the conflicts that exist there. I had a dream when I left my house 25 years back. When I was 15, I left my home place down South India. I went over to this place. I had this one aim in my mind, or I had one dream that I must work for some people. I had no clear view, but I landed up in a place which I myself did not know much about before. But after so many years of working, one thing that we see is in front of our eyes, we see the growth taking place in spite of many, many difficulties. I try to empower the people. We have three, let's say, we divide the society into three: the aged, old, the seniors, with whom we cannot change their mindsets. We need to live them, make them live as comfortable as they can, and towards and have a good end of their life or senior phase of their life. We have the middle-aged people who are getting into a lot of problems, conflicts, drug abuse, AIDS, and we need to prevent them. Whereas the third segment of the society is the growing generation, whom we can really train and whom we can facilitate. People are good given the multi-talented nature that they have, but can we build bridge? This is a simple role that I play to be a link for them towards development. I try to bring basic facilities. I try hard. Toilets, food, clothing, shelter. When we explain to people, it's not easy for them to understand because the documentation shows that central government pours crores of rupees to this land, but we don't know where the crores disappear. Therefore, people can't easily agree when we speak on their behalf. Computer knowledge. I took my students 3 hours of journey to have 10-day course on computer. Because the new generation that comes up, I want to tell them that they can have big dreams, they can realize. So it's not a question of providing facilities only, but it's hard also on the other side to promote growth from within. So I try to balance all this. And this forum, my suggestion is this. We are all talking theories and experiences that we are trying to put together. But my simple suggestion is this. Can we bring practically the people into the forum of development? Something like NGOs. It speaks a lot about documentation, it talks about training, it talks a lot about meetings. But down to the level, how much money is actually spent, it's often quite pathetic. We need to link and I'm sure those of you are sitting here have a lot of access to resources. Can you make it available to far and remote areas of places like Nagaland? In some areas of Nagaland, I'm not saying that the whole of Nagaland is banned or remote. A good bit of portion of the land is accessible, educated, facilitated, but there is also another good bit of land which can develop and facilitate, which will definitely bring social development not only in the area but the whole of the state. This is my simple presentation and simple explanation of what I do. God bless.
Hi everyone. Yesterday I was greatly humbled and honored to receive the Choice for Equality Award. I had many people to thank, These people have supported me throughout my journey of giving back, contributing to various organizations, and making a difference in the world. First, I want to thank God Almighty for giving me the knowledge, wisdom, and strength to serve humanity. Second, I want to thank my family for their unwavering support for the work that I do at the grassroots level, within communities, working with NGOs, civil society, and the United Nations. I thought about the topic, equal in an unequal world. I looked at my own experience. My experience of being a woman. In my family, there were 6 girls and 3 boys. Societal attitudes, traditional attitudes intervened. Traditionally, my parents were constantly challenged. The people in the community asked my parents, "Why are you educating girls? Let them get married, let them just have a primary education. Don't waste your money." But my father and mother had a vision. Girls are as equally important as boys. And for that reason, my parents were not that rich, but they invested in all 9 children and other extended families. Today, all of us within the family, we have 2nd degrees and higher, from BAs to masters to PhDs. And we're still giving back to the community. When I had my PhD, I decided to form the organization Gadiago, Gender and Development Interaction Governmental Organization. This organization was a way for me to give back to the community. And I started with my community in Cameroon. The organization deals with education beyond the primary level. It looks at secondary, high school, and the university level. It also deals with health issues. Health issues are very prevalent in Africa as a whole. Maternal care, taking care of children as young as 4 years old, 5 years old. It also deals with environmental issues. The forest is a great resource in Cameroon and in other parts of the world. But what do we see? Deforestation. If you want medicines, you can go to the forest and get some herbs. The quinine that we know for malaria came out of the bark of trees. Now, if we chop down the trees, what do we expect in 20 years? We have to think. Corporations, businesses, religious institutions, the governments, we should think that we depend on nature. Next, as a professor, I created the African Students Organization. The students in my university work very hard, but sometimes they are being discriminated against. Most of them major in medicine, in engineering, and more. And I felt that I needed to give them a voice, so I created this organization. And there are many others that I'm part of. The Women's Federation for World Peace, the Professionals for Humanity. They perform surgeries in Africa and other parts of the world for free. The New Jersey Education Association. And the list is endless. When I had received this award, it motivated me to do more. I will not rest. I will continue to serve humanity. And I did not travel here alone. I did travel with my sister in unity and peace, Dr. Eunice Kamonge. Women, we have a support system, and we have to help each other most of the times. We have shoulders to cry on, and I see the men in this room, the president of Infosys. I am standing on your shoulder. Dr. Christoph, I'm standing on your shoulder. You guys are setting examples. And if we leave this place, we all have an obligation to perform little acts of kindness. Don't turn your backs and point the finger. No, it's not happening to me. And 4 fingers are pointing back at you. Heads of corporations, you have an obligation to your employers. If women are employed, give them childcare. Let them work for you and know that their children are safe on the premises. So, in conclusion, we have to bridge that gap through many, many ways. But for me, education is at the center. And then other things will fall in place. I want to thank you all very much for giving me this opportunity. And we should continue to serve humanity the best way we can serve them. Thank you very much.
Ashwin, it's over to you.
My apologies, first of all, that I was a few minutes late. I had to get here from a different event. During the course of the last couple of days, you would have heard from a lot of different people about extraordinary lives of struggle and achievement. And that's very important to understanding the work that so many people have to do for equality, for justice, for fairness. But I want to give you another perspective. I'm not going to talk to you about the work that I do, because I think that's not as important as asking, what is it that more and more of us can do? There is something beyond struggle that each one of us can think about, which I think can foster equality. Inequality is a social problem. I think a lot of us will agree readily to that. It's not a technical problem. It's not a managerial problem. It's a social problem. It's not merely an economic problem. It's actually a social problem. And so it begs the question, if you have a technical problem, it's common to put technologists, technicians to work to solve that problem. If you have a managerial problem, you will get managers and administrators to work on that problem. And if you have a social problem, who should work on it? Everybody. All of us. Right. Everybody should work on it. But what does it mean to say that all of us should work on it? When you say that all of us should work on a problem, it's not immediately clear who should work on what. You know, something that is everybody's problem is actually nobody's problem. And this is the reason why we continue with social challenges, because they are seen to be everybody's domain, and yet nobody's domain of work. So what can we begin to do about that? That's the question that sort of I've been thinking about. And there are good reasons why we need to do this too. Because in government, not only in developing countries like India, but around the world, there is tremendous undercapacity to solve social problems. Governments are extraordinarily incapable of convincing themselves that they can solve these problems, and yet not being able to come anywhere close to the solution. I think in each of our respective countries, we have a very long record of failed efforts to address inequality. And not only that, governments work in extraordinary silos. There are guys who work next door to each other who've never spoken to each other for generations. And in some way, to expect that these guys are going to solve the problem is a kind of false belief that we need to get away from. So I have a certain hypothesis that I use to advocate a lot of things, advocate change making. I say that in countries like India, or even in really formal countries, well-developed countries around the world, it is no longer sufficient to find the answers to problems and try to scale them. Because you're actually never going to hit anywhere near the kind of outcomes that you want by that approach. Instead, what you need to be doing is to increase the number of problem-solving people. All over the world, if you expect real sustainable development, this has to be an important goal for each one of us. How do we increase the number of problem-solving people and not worry so much about what particular solutions they might come up with? Can we put our faith in communities and people and individuals and say that if we merely work to increase the number of people that participated to create positive change, actually that kind of change is much more likely as a result of it? How do we pursue that kind of strategy? The second is and the reason this is important is that there's a tendency to think of equality as the outcome of our efforts. But perhaps equality is not the outcome of our efforts. It doesn't really matter if the outcomes are delivered through unequal systems for a lot of people. Fundamentally, what people see as equality is participation, their right of participation, their belonging in what they see as public systems. Even in formal legal systems as far back as in the 1950s, the American Supreme Court had ruled that separate systems can never be equal. If separation is fundamentally unequal, why is it that we don't imbibe that in our attitudes towards addressing inequality? How do we create a more participatory society in which the participation, the process of participation, is itself the thing that becomes our measure of equality? And we're not so much focused on the outcomes alone. And in some ways, I'm a child of privilege. I would not claim to have gone through any extraordinary struggle to do any of the things that I do today. My parents were already college educated. I have 4 college degrees, if it means anything. But the reality is that even those of us, perhaps more so than those who struggle, even those of us who don't have to struggle for achievement, for personal accomplishment in life, perhaps we have more to contribute to equality than those that don't have all these privileges that we have. In some ways, they are struggling against us. The idea that they should achieve equality by struggling against us is fundamental. It should be anathema to us. It should make us look in the mirror and say, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? In some way, I contend that if we want to increase the number of problem-solving people, the simplest way to do that is to look in the mirror and say, I'm going to be one of those persons. Then I think there is an opportunity for each one of us to do something like that. What does this mean for an institution like this or for an initiative like this? What does this mean for a forum like this? And I want to suggest that what we need to have is an agenda for equality. Not merely a struggle for equality, but an agenda for equality and a measure of what we accept as equality. Can we in forums like this say that countries that are more participatory are more equal? Countries that empower local decision making are more equal? Countries that devolve the availability of finances to people in their own communities are more equal? Countries that provide opportunities for participation in public life, these are more equal. Can we come up with an agenda that fundamentally measures these things in a much more participatory way than merely looking at outcomes? Yes, health indicators matter, education matters, and a lot of other outcomes matter. But these are actually the result of fundamentally stronger processes that are embracing equality themselves. And if we can set up an agenda that measures how much each one of us is able to foster that participatory environment, I think we'll get much better outcomes from having these discussions among ourselves.
Thanks, Ashwin. I think what a great way to close this panel. So I think it asks all of us at the Diplomatics Forum 3 questions. What are we doing as individuals to make a difference in terms of bridging this gap? Second one, what are we doing through our institutional roles that we play in making this gap bridged? And even more interesting, and the last one that he's actually talking about is, as citizens of a global world, what is it that we are doing to make change happen? And I think what's powerful and compelling is that I think every single one of our nominees, actually for me, Ashwin has articulated very clearly what each one of them was trying to ask of this forum, and I do believe that's an important agenda for us as we take it forward tomorrow. Once more, a great, put your hands together for this wonderful panel and the set of the nominees who are here in the room today and the others who've been nominated as a part of this process. If they have made the difference, I think we need to make even more of it. Thank you. Thank you so much.